Hi, everyone. I think we'll get started. So I'm Eddie Garcia. I'm the co-director of the coalition and your MC again today. Thank you for all of those who joined us yesterday, and thank you for returning for day 2 of our Ending Social Isolation and Loneliness Action Forum. We are so excited to move into the second day of programming, and I'm going to ask my co-director and friend Andrew McPherson to join me for some opening remarks.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, Eddie. Good morning. And good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Andrew McPherson, and I am the founder and co-director of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness. I'm absolutely thrilled to officially welcome you to day 2 of the first annual Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness Action Forum. Thank you again to our members, to our supporters, and all of our attendees for joining us today. I also want to start by thanking all of our incredible speakers from day 1 of our event. From David Brooks of the New York Times and Weave at the Aspen Institute, to our scientific advisory board members and international partners, we had an extraordinary content-rich day where we explored the epidemic of isolation and loneliness in this country. Thank you as well to Senator Tina Smith and Congressman David Trone, 2 of our champions on Capitol Hill in Washington, for their support and remarks. Without question, to truly transform how we support those who are socially isolated and or lonely in this country, we will need strong bipartisan support from members of Congress and the executive branch, regardless of who is elected president in the coming weeks. To that end, I encourage you to visit our website, www.endsocialisolation.org, for more information about our consensus-based policy priorities. Okay, now for day 2 of our event. Today, we're excited to dive into evidence-based innovations, from school-based programs to government programs to tech innovators, community-based interventions in national health plan pilots and benefit designs. Today, we discuss solutions to address the crisis of social isolation and loneliness in America. You know, I was struck this morning when I read in the Washington Post about a young woman named Hita Gupta, just 15 years old, who started a nonprofit to address loneliness called Brighten Your Day. Based in Pennsylvania, she sends cards and letters and care packages to seniors in long-term care facilities nationwide. But that communication, those cards, those letters, it's really one-sided, Hita found. And it was really not that deeply knowing and being known, as David Brooks discussed with us yesterday. Well, today she's offering another service, video calls with volunteers to elders across our country, inspired by Skype calls with her grandparents in India during the pandemic. Hita has signed up over 100 volunteers to make calls and has purchased laptops and iPads for residents in over 70 facilities across the country. She's 15 years old, and this story was published just this morning. You know, it seems like every day we hear of more and more people seeing deeply and being deeply seen, addressing the epidemic of blindness in America, as David Brooks put it. This inspires us as a coalition and as a community to keep working and keep innovating. And that's what brings us to our agenda of extraordinary innovators today. So with that, I'm going to pass the virtual mic back to our MC, my friend, my colleague, and the co-director of the coalition, Eddie Garcia. Go for it, Eddie.
Thanks, Andrew. Really inspiring work that he is doing, and what we'll hear from all of our panelists today, and the work that we're collectively doing to address social connection. I'm so excited to jump into that. Before we do, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items with everyone. A few things. The Q&A has been disabled throughout this event, and we will be moving from a little bit of jumping around today. So we'll be moving from our main session into some breakouts and the program. We'll be putting the links to those Zoom appointments in the chat, and we'll talk about this a little further when the time comes. We'll also be recording this session. All of the recordings from the 2 days will be posted on our website, excuse me, which is at endsocialisolation.org/action forum, where you can see today's agenda and all the Zoom links that I mentioned for today's breakout session. All participants will be muted and their cameras will be off throughout the remainder of the 2 days. And should you need any technical assistance while you're on the program, you can reach out to us at info@endsocialisolation.org. And then finally, we just want to remind everyone that the coalition has a zero tolerance for any form of discrimination or harassment, including but not limited to sexual harassment by participants or our staff. If we see instances of improper conduct, we will remove the individual from this platform, and we hope that everyone can come together in a more collaborative spirit and really at the spirit of what we're trying to get at over these 2 days. Also, before we jump into the programming, I did want to take this opportunity now, rather than at the end of today, to thank a number of organizations and entities that helped to make these 2 days possible. In particular, we want to thank Meals on Wheels America, leadership and staff, namely Ellie Hollander, who you heard from yesterday, Carter Florence, Sammy Heffron, and Sharon Coral, for their incredible and generous production support over these 2 days. We also want to thank Risa Wilkerson of Healthy Places by Design and our partners at Humana for their planning support early on and throughout the development of this event. And of course, as Andrew mentioned, it's a sincere thanks to each of our panelists, moderators, and keynote speakers over these 2 days. But most importantly, our biggest gratitude goes out to our coalition staff, Meg Wallace, the coalition manager, Connor Beauregard, our communications specialist, Wesley Adams, our policy director, and the numerous policy and support experts at Healthsperian for their countless hours dedicated to making this 2020 Action Forum a success. So with that, I'll jump right into it. Up first today, we have a keynote address from the Administration for Community Living on the large number of programs and initiatives they're undertaking to build connectedness and to combat social isolation and loneliness. We're fortunate to have with us today Lori Gerhard, the Director of the Office of Interagency Innovation for the U.S. Administration for Community Living. The Office of Interagency Innovation partners with federal departments such as HHS Office of Assistant Secretary for Health, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, the Federal Communications Commission, the Department of Transportation, and many others, and agencies like the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and national and state local organizations like the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness, to increase access to services that address social determinants of health, and to develop, implement, and replicate innovative solutions that enable older adults, people with disabilities, and their caregivers to maximize their independence, well-being, and health. Lori's portfolio of work includes addressing social isolation, increasing access to assistive technology, transportation, self-directed services, housing, and long-term services and supports. We are so fortunate to have Lori with us today, and we'll hear more about what she's doing to bring together a number of organizations around these topics. Thank you, Lori, and thank you for your partnership in joining us today. So great to have you.
Thank you, Eddie, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you with the Coalition to End Social Isolation and the Foundation for Social Connection, the Meals on Wheels America, the AARP Foundation, international partners that are addressing social isolation, Mr. David Brooks, the Executive Director of the WEAVE, the Social Fabric Project, Dr. Julianne Holt-Lundstedt, Chair of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness Scientific Advisory Council, and members of the Scientific Advisory Council, U.S. legislative leaders, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and their grantees, the members of the Coalition to End Social Isolation, the Aspen Institute, technology innovators, Beyond Differences, and Humana, to share information and actions we are taking and can take to end social isolation and loneliness. It will take all of us working together at the international, national, state, community, and neighborhood levels to connect and engage our neighbors, family, and friends who are experiencing social isolation and/or loneliness. First, I'd like to share some information about the Administration for Community Living. If we can go to the next slide, and the next slide, and the next one. So stop if we go back to the one before that. We are an operating agency within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Our mission is to maximize the independence, well-being, and health of older adults, people with disabilities across the lifespan, and their families and caregivers. Our vision is for all people, regardless of age and disability, to live with dignity, make their own choices, and participate fully in society. Therefore, for the people we serve, we will promote strategies that enable people to live in their community. For our networks, we will provide leadership and support. For our partners, we will be a source of collaboration, innovation, and solutions. For our employees, we will support their contributions, professional growth, and work-life balance. And for the public, we will be effective stewards of public resources and a source of information. Our annual budget is roughly $2 billion, although this year we received an additional $1 billion in funding to support older adults and people with disabilities during the pandemic. In addition to our appropriated funds, we also coordinate with our federal partners on programs and services they fund to address the nutritional, housing, transportation, and other social needs for the people we serve. This includes the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the U.S. Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and many others. Our collective spend on these programs is impactful, especially when it's well coordinated across agencies and with our state and community partners. Next slide. Each year, we serve over 10 million older adults, people with disabilities, and caregivers through our nationwide aging and disability networks. These networks are available in 56 states and territories and have more than 1,222 access points and over 20,000 service providers. The nationwide aging and disability networks reach into every community across the nation, and they're staffed and operated by the people that live in the community. The Nationwide Aging and Disability Network is composed of state no wrong door systems, aging and disability resource centers, state units on aging, area agencies on aging, centers for independent living, university centers on excellence for people with developmental disabilities, tribal organizations, and many more. This is a key asset for our country in both helping people to navigate the complex maze of long-term services and programs, and in helping people who are socially isolated get connected and engaged. See, people living in communities are more aware of the services and resources available in the community and the needs of their neighbors. They know the culture of the community, the formal and informal influential leaders in the community, the greatest strengths of the community, as well as the greatest needs. They really are the people that can best address the needs of their neighbors. ACL, the Administration for Community Living, and our nationwide networks, in partnership with a myriad of organizations who are engaging with older adults, people with disabilities of any age, their families and caregivers through these networks and partnerships, we've worked together to begin to address social isolation. If we go on to the next slide. Social isolation has been an issue prior to COVID-19 pandemic. You heard this information yesterday from the Coalition to End Social Isolation and the researchers, but it's worth repeating again today. People of all ages experience social isolation and or loneliness. Nearly 25% of Americans aged 65 and older are considered to be socially isolated, the objective state of having few social relationships or infrequent social contact with others, while 43% of those 60 and over report feeling lonely. Harmful health outcomes have been associated with isolation and loneliness, including premature mortality, a higher risk for developing dementia, heart failure, and stroke, and increased risk of hospitalizations. According to an AARP study, analysis of Medicare spending has revealed an additional $6.7 billion, that's billion with a B, is spent annually on enrollees who are socially isolated. Imagine if we could help those people get connected and engaged and use those funds to work in that direction rather than responding to the impacts of social isolation. It would be a game changer. As people practice social distancing, the risk of social isolation and loneliness is greater. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that even when we're connecting with family or friends from a distance, we can still feel isolated and or lonely. As human beings, we're grounded in social connections. It's a key element for thriving and growth. So I'd like to share some information on actions the federal government and specifically ACL is taking to engage and connect people experiencing or at risk of social isolation and loneliness. Next slide. We've been building social engagement and connection into our existing programs. Many area agencies on aging, centers for independent living, state no wrong door systems, Senior centers and adult daycare programs implemented friendly call programs to check in with their clients on a regular basis. These organizations, along with the State Assistive Technology Act programs, offered webinars to make people aware of technology products and platforms they could use to engage with family, friends, and neighbors, and to continue to engage in services virtually. State Assistive Technology Act programs conducted one-on-one sessions with clients using the telephone and technology products. A great deal of their work focused on training people on how to use the technology products and allowing people with short-term loans of technology products to extend the loan to enable the person to connect and engage and continue their services. Some of the evidence-based disease prevention programs initiated virtual sessions and apps to enable people to continue these programs and services. One example is the Maryland Living Well Center of Excellence, a division of MAC Incorporated, a Maryland Area Agency on Aging on the Eastern Shore. Living Well Center of Excellence worked with Eagle Force to develop an app that screens for social isolation and uses Dr. Matthew Smith's assessment instrument, an upstream social isolation risk screener. Based on a screening score, Living Well Center for Excellence offers PEARLS, an evidence-based intervention to address social isolation, loneliness, and depression. The Living Well Center for Excellence has experienced a large increase in referrals for services as more older adults and people with disabilities are remaining at home during COVID-19. Through the home delivered meal program, volunteers delivering meals checked in with meal recipients, and in collaboration with some housing providers, Leading Age and AARP Foundation, checked in with meal recipients on the availability of telephones and technology devices to determine what types of social engagement or social connection programs, software, and technology could be offered to enable the meal recipient to get engaged and get connected. Transportation providers began providing reverse transportation. Transportation providers engaged with people needing transportation and picked up their groceries and supplies and delivered them to their homes. During this process, they engaged with those they would have transported to or from grocery stores, pharmacies, and shopping centers. Transportation drivers are checking in with those that they have been transporting to learn how they are doing and understand what they need and where to pick up their items. So next slide. We've also offered webinars to increase knowledge and awareness of social isolation and social engagement programs and technologies. We've been working with organizations addressing social isolation like the Coalition to End Social Isolation, the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging, N4A, Advancing States, AT3, the State Assistive Technology Act programs, Technical Assistance Resource Center, the Consumer Technology Association Foundation, the National Council on Aging, the AARP Foundation, the Colorado Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering, Meals on Wheels America, Leading Age Center for Aging Services Technology, the Georgia Tech Pass It On Center, and the Older Adults Technology Services. Together with these organizations, we've hosted several webinars and events, often reaching thousands of people to increase awareness of social isolation and the technology and programs available to engage and connect people. These webinars have been recorded and are available to listen to by those that were unable to attend. Through CARES Act funding, we increased access to assistive technology and social engagements programs and technologies. We issued Aging and Disability Resource Center No Wrong Door grants to states and territories to build partnerships with colleagues to increase access to assistive technology, address social isolation, facilitate care transitions, and serve older adults and people with disabilities. Approximately 21 states are working in partnership with their State Assistive Technology Act programs to increase access to assistive technology, and a subset of states are working together to address social isolation. Two states that come to mind are Virginia and Connecticut. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Connecticut's actions. Connecticut's CARES Act Stay Connected program is a collaborative effort led by Connecticut's No Wrong Door system and includes the Connecticut State Unit on Aging, Connecticut's Tech Act program, 5 area agencies on aging, 5 centers for independent living, 3 assistive technology partners, and Quinnipiac University School of Nursing. The Stay Connected program utilizes Professor Nicholas R. Nicholson's 6-question social isolation scale to identify older adults and individuals with disabilities who are socially isolated or at risk of social isolation. Based on survey results, an individual is referred for an assistive technology consultation, and services are provided by the Connecticut Tech Act program and assistive technology partners. No Wrong Door systems are helping people at risk of social isolation get connected to social engagement programs and technologies. And this is really important because many technology devices have accessibility features built into them, but many people are unaware of these accessibility features. So by using accessibility features, we can enlarge print so it's easier to see. We can activate some voice audio options, and the Assistive Technology Act programs can help people learn how to use these accessibility features. And we engage in partnerships across federal government and with national, state, and community organizations. So on our next slide, ACL awarded, if we go back one. Thank you. ACL awarded ENGAGE, the National Resource Center for Older Adults, to the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging. And I saw N4A is going to be on the agenda later today. Well, ENGAGE is a national effort to increase social engagement among older adults through a variety of activities. ENGAGE identifies and disseminates information about emerging trends, resources, and replication strategies that the Aging Network can customize for use in their communities. Recently, over 2,500 people attended the Social Isolation Virtual Summit hosted by ENGAGE. These slides include links to the ENGAGE National Resource Center for Older Adults and the Social Isolation Virtual Summit. We encourage you to use this resource and view the recording of the summit. It is rich with resources and experts working together to engage and connect those who are isolated and or lonely. So there's a lot going on. And if we move on to the next slide, in partnership with the White House Office of Science Technology Policy, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the Federal Communications Commission, and the Consumer Technology Association Foundation, we announced the Mobilizing and Empowering the Nation and Technology to Address Loneliness and Social Isolation Mental Health Innovation Challenge in June 2020. Applications were due September 14th. The specific challenge is to develop a clearinghouse of social engagement programs and technologies with a user interface that screens for social isolation, obtains persons' needs, interests, and preferences, including accessibility needs, and matches them using a built-in algorithm to social engagement programs, technology, software, and apps. It enables them to enroll in selected programs and or acquire technology, software, and apps, including training videos, user reviews, and enables people to share information with their clinicians and or family members as they choose. A total of 750,000 in prizes is available through the challenge. The challenge has 3 phases. Phase 1 ended September 14th, 2020. A panel of judges reviewed and scored all 38 submissions. 8 teams moved into Phase 1, Part 2 of the judging process, where they demonstrated their solution to a panel of judges and answered specific questions about their solution. We're proud to announce the 2 teams that will be advancing to Phase 2 of the challenge. This is very exciting. The 2 teams that will be advancing is the Social Health Connector, which is led by Sarah Link, who is the No Wrong Door of Virginia, the Virginia Department for Aging and Rehabilitation Services, and their partners include Virginia Commonwealth University Department of Gerontology, Virginia Navigator, and Andrew Kim. The Social Health Connector proposed by the No Wrong Door Virginia team aims to engage people in a reflective, person-centered virtual conversation about the benefits of social connections and how resources and technology can help to maintain or improve health. The tool aggregates information from databases operated by the team partners and other vetted sources about devices, electronic applications, and services that can help people connect and engage. Visitors can browse all available resources or complete a short but comprehensive assessment of their social health to receive personalized answers, options, and resources based on their individual responses and preferences. The individual then selects from those suggestions and can add others they find through browsing to create their own social connection plan. The assessment can be completed in a text-based format or through a video tutorial. Conditional logic is used to further personalize the experience. For example, if a user responds that they do not feel safe in their primary relationship, the tool offers immediate suggestions and resources for support. Visitors have the option to enroll in programs directly from the site, and consumer reviews of products are incorporated. The project builds upon several existing resources, including No Wrong Door Virginia, Virginia Navigator, Elder Care Locator, and 211. And we're also proud to announce that UConnect will also be advancing. The team lead is Matthew Aliberti from United Way Worldwide, and their partners include UpPurpose. UConnect is a digital matchmaking tool that leverages the 211 network's comprehensive nationwide database of human and social services and resources, as well as United Way's presence in more than 1,100 U.S. communities to provide opportunities for people to engage and connect in healthy ways in their communities. Social engagement tools, as well as social services and resources, will be accessible via the National 211 database. The user interface and matching process will build on technology being developed by United Way to engage millions of volunteers and donors. Based on information entered by the user, the tool will use artificial intelligence to identify and match appropriate services and engagement opportunities. The brief assessment also will screen for risks like depression and can route the individual to a more in-depth screening and additional support if necessary. The user can exit the profile creation step at any point to browse resources to get immediate help from local 211 specialists available 24/7 nationwide. And I have to tell you, the competition was very strong. And so we're also pleased to announce 6 honorable mentions. They include Caring Wire, Engage, Engaging While Aging Everywhere, Leading Age Cases Tool, the Medication and Immunizations Management Initiative, MMI-RX, Resource and Referral Solution, Senior Link, and Telavita. More information about these solutions can be found at our website, acl.gov/mental. Phase 2 of the challenge began on October 7th, 2020 and ends December 4th. A panel of judges will review the submissions, and the top 2 winning solutions will present the winning solution will be announced at the virtual CES 2021 in January. Phase 3 begins when the winning solution is announced at CES 2021 and proceeds through September 30th, 2021. And the winning solution and runner-up are eligible for a $50,000 bonus prize for scaling the solution and submitting and/or implementing a plan to sustain the solution. We are impressed with the interest and submissions for the challenge and the collaborative spirit among the competitors and our partner organizations and agencies to work together to develop and stand up the clearinghouse so more people can get connected to programs and technologies that are already available in the marketplace. As we mentioned earlier, we are working with 12 national and state-based organizations that were already working to address social isolation. We've convened this group of organizations beginning in April 2020 and have been sharing our individual work and identifying collective work we can do together. The webinars we mentioned earlier and the Mental Health Innovation Challenge are a result of this work, and we're just getting started. If we move on to the next slide. The future activities we are taking in collaboration with the Coalition to End Social Isolation and our partners and federal agencies include standing up a coordinating center to address social isolation. This center will be on point for our ongoing public-private collaboration for our national initiative. Build out a website of resources and link to additional resources to engage and connect people who are experiencing or at risk of social isolation. Develop and implement a governance structure for the clearinghouse of social engagement programs and technologies, and support the development of our public-private public awareness campaign to connect and engage 10 million people who are socially isolated. Together, we will be developing a nationwide network of people working to connect and engage people that are socially isolated and/or lonely. Neighbors helping neighbors. We envision that this nationwide network will include champions in every community that will be in touch with the people that are socially isolated, connected with the formal and informal leaders, faith-based organizations, clinicians, and community-based organizations to garner their support to help increase awareness of social isolation and loneliness and the available programs, technologies, low-tech, high-tech, and no-tech options that are already available and can be used to engage and connect those experiencing social isolation. It will take all of us working together to reach every person that is lonely and or socially isolated. Together we can succeed. Margaret Mead said it best. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. We'd like to highlight the partner organizations that have been instrumental in developing the actions we've undertaken and the future actions we just mentioned. If we move on to the next slide. And I've mentioned these organizations before, and you'll see them listed on this slide. So we'll move on to the next slide. We are grateful of the great work and support of our partners and federal agencies. We cannot accomplish our goal alone. It will take all of us as individuals doing our part. So individual actions we can take. Well, it's very simple. We could call a family member, friend, or neighbor. You know, this morning Andrew talked about the work that Geeta's doing. One person can really do a lot, and her example was a great example. We can contact one of the partner organizations in your community and offer to help make calls, deliver meals, teach an online class, assist with transportation. As David Brooks mentioned yesterday, we can do things with people, not for people, but with people. He mentioned what being a neighbor is. We help each other. We can also create platforms that programs can be built on. There is a role for each of us and our organizations. Can you help us grow awareness of social isolation and loneliness and connect people to the social engagement programs and technologies that are available? If you'd like to be engaged, please feel free to email me, Lori Gerhard. My contact information is on the last slide. Thank you for the work you are already doing and the work you will be doing to connect and engage people that are experiencing or at risk of social isolation.
Hi everyone, I'm sorry we lost our connection there. Just thanking Lori for all of the tremendous remarks. And just to letting you all know, we'll now be moving into our concurrent breakout sessions. We have 3 different sessions that are happening simultaneously. We'll now be moving from this main room into those three breakouts. The first is a breakout by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation on strategies to address social isolation and loneliness in the US, but from a global perspective. The second is a breakout of coalition members and the programs that they are running, moderated by Kasley Killam. And then finally, a third panel that is being run by the Aspen Institute, and we're looking at their technology innovators. We are asking each of you to join these panels via the links that we are posting right now in the chat function. You will click on those links, the link of your choosing that corresponds to each of those breakouts. You'll join that breakout immediately, and there are staff there to run you through those presentations. And at the end of those breakouts, there'll be a link provided again to rejoin this main session. Should you need any technical assistance, please use the chat function, and a support staff person will reach out to help you. Again, we are moving into our breakouts. We are posting the links to those breakouts now in the chat, and those breakout links will take you directly to the breakouts. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. We hope that you had a breakout, your breakout panel was illuminating and provided you with some fodder for future follow-up. Again, all of our presentations and recordings for this 2-day virtual event will be made available on our website following this event. Up next, we have a very special presentation from one of the coalition's newer members, Beyond Differences, whose co-founder and executive director, Laura Talmas, has joined us today. Laura is the full-time executive director of Beyond Differences, a student-led social justice organization dedicated to ending social isolation among middle school students. Beyond Differences is the recipient of a Marin Community Foundation Award to undertake a groundbreaking initiative to advance social emotional learning in California in partnership with the governor, First Partner, and the Superintendent of Public Instruction. The Advanced SEL initiative has now spawned a permanent statewide coalition launching this fall. Laura has received numerous awards and recognitions, including being selected as an AARP Purpose Prize Fellow, a Jefferson Prize Award winner, receiving the MLK Junior Humanitarian Award for the Marin County Human Rights Commission, the Courageous Leaders Award, and the Jewish Community Relations Council of San Francisco, and the North Bay Business Journal Awards Nonprofit Leadership Award. It's an honor to have Laura join us today and to provide her video for us. Thank you for your partnership, Laura, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you for that kind introduction. And it's so good to be with everyone this afternoon talking about social isolation. The field of social isolation and loneliness has been, well, a bit lonely, but not any longer. I believe we will never go back to the days when talking about social isolation drew vacant stares and required a lot of extra explanation. Beyond Difference's mission is to inspire youth in all middle schools to end social isolation and create cultures of belonging. A big mission for a small organization, I have to admit, but our passion to change what has been the, oh well, adolescence is just a difficult time and kids are just going to have to get through it. After all, we all did, should no longer be accepted. And in fact, it drives us to our goal of reaching 100% of all the middle and junior high schools in our country with our original curriculum, our student leadership activities, and our National Awareness Day celebrations. As of today, and 10 years after our founding, we have made great progress towards that goal. We now partner with over 6,000 schools in all 50 states, which amazingly enough, still only represents approximately 30% of all the middle and junior high schools in our country. We will continue to strive for 100%. How we began and why we focus on middle school is our story of origin, and one that is very personal to me. My husband and I are blessed with 2 children, one who easily breezed through those tough social years during middle school, and one who didn't fare quite as well. Our younger child, Lily, was born with a rare cranial facial syndrome called APERT, which caused features of her hands, face, and feet to appear differently. Lily was smart, funny, had a passion for social justice, an appetite for reading books, and an insistence that she join me for every manicure, pedicure, and music concert I ever attended. But what she really wanted more than anything else was acceptance from her peer group. And that is what began to change when she hit middle school. No longer did the girls, the same ones with whom she grew up, want her to sit with them at lunch. I would often receive calls from Lily crying in the girls' bathroom, asking me to pick her up and take her home. It was heartbreaking to watch Lily's social life disappear, so much so that we made the difficult decision of having her homeschooled for 7th and 8th grades just so she would go on to high school. My Lily passed away unexpectedly in her sleep from medical complications associated with her syndrome just 7 weeks into her freshman year of high school. She was 15 years old. And through those devastating first few months, I was touched by the fact that a group of her former classmates came to me and asked if they could do something in her honor and talked about social isolation as what they selected. Brave, courageous young children who began by visiting local middle schools and presenting assembly programs, and then helping us develop student leadership activities, and finally now helping to influence our curriculum, which is aligned with both Common Core standards and CESIL competencies. We know teachers are using this curriculum every chance they can. Why? Because they know what we know, that every day children are showing up for school with feelings of being marginalized, disconnected, invisible, and simply not accepted for who they are. And those feelings, as we heard yesterday from the Scientific Advisory Council, are manifesting in serious ways by decreased academic achievements, medical complications, depression, self-harm, and quite often suicide ideation. Before Beyond Differences began talking about this issue, no one else was. Our programs are student run, which is what makes us so effective. We had no idea how fast we would grow, but we stayed focused on social isolation and, in my humble opinion, brilliantly stubborn on one truism: students listen to other students. We now have the proof of what we thought all along. From an evidence-based research study we conducted in New York City 2 years ago, our programs work. We now know what we're doing works, and the only question is how to get it working in more places. We are changing education policy in our home state of California to insist that social and emotional learning no longer be a luxury, but an essential and critical part of a child's education. We must care for their mental health and well-being. It is an issue of equity and urgency for all children. Today, you are going to see a video starring a group of our high school leaders from our Portland, Oregon Teen Board of Directors. A group of 40 volunteers sign up to mentor middle schoolers, help create activism campaigns, inform our teachers' curriculum as to what would hold a student's attention in the classroom, and to speak at national conferences, all to enlighten the world about the devastating effects of social isolation. We thank Andrew, Eddie, and all the other coalition members for giving voice to the youth of our country and inviting Beyond Differences to present this afternoon at the Action Forum. Our youth has experienced more isolation than ever thought possible, brought on by the COVID pandemic, than at any other time in our country's history. I'm hopeful that if we all listen to these students, they will tell you what they need and how to reach them best. They are super smart human beings. And I know that if Lily were alive today, she would be growing up in a world where acceptance, respect, and inclusion of all classmates has become the new cool in school. We are creating the change we want to see in the world. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kai, and I'm a Beyond Differences Teen Board member. The mission of Beyond Differences is to raise awareness of social isolation and to end social isolation in middle schools nationwide. I'm here with other Teen Board members for a new panel discussion series we call Beyond Engaged. I'm here with Chicky, Alder, Gio, Javante, and Cicely. Today we're going to talk about social isolation, which takes a new meaning during the time of COVID-19. So let's kick off today's talk with a short film which I think many of us can relate to. Let's roll it. Wow, that had me tearing up at the end there. I don't think before this I've been able to really express what quarantine has felt like for me. And I think I've questioned whether my feelings of grief or fear or loneliness were even valid if I'm here sitting safe at home. That's how I felt like I related to the video. What about you guys?
I think I can relate to that, just kind of sitting down and doing work and just being alone in my house, and all of that was kind of similar to my experience. And just as quarantine grew longer and having to do school at home and everything, I think I could definitely relate to like just getting more almost angry that that's even what my senior year ended up being.
Yeah, I definitely feel like she captured the monotony behind being trapped within a screen, because that's kind of what our lives have become. Is even this, we have to communicate between a screen on Zoom, as even just like FaceTiming your friend, like how they had it flashing between the different days and her sitting in the same spot doing the same work. In addition, I loved how they panned around the room at the beginning, showing the photos and almost like she's reminiscing on the life before coronavirus and before quarantine. And yeah, I think the video did an amazing job of just capturing a feeling that everyone is experiencing right now.
I like how the video, it showed her computer and all the assignments she was missing. I know that was a really big change for all of us, and I could really relate to that, just feeling like every day was so repetitive and, just that feeling of loneliness.
Like it's been months now that we've been in quarantine, and it feels like this is just the new normal now. And it's crazy how you could have never even imagined this like before. I remember when we left school, it was like, oh, we'll be out for 2 weeks and then we'll be back. And then it's like, oh, we'll be back next year. And like, it just keeps, extending and extending. And it's just crazy how much we've just gotten used to it, and kind of almost already, I feel like I've already kind of forgotten what it's like to not be in the pandemic.
I think when we first went into quarantine, we all didn't really know what to expect. But over time, as time progressed, we all just became overwhelmed with like having to repeat the same day over and over again, and being inside can really become very pressuring. And what really resonated with me is that the creator was able to convey so much emotion without speaking.
Right, Javante, the film had no dialogue, yet it was able to convey how numbing and even soul-crushing this disconnection can be. I'd like to think that if anything positive comes out of it, it's that loneliness has become a collective experience, and with it, empathy and awareness around it. How do we spot social isolation?
Yeah, like when spotting social isolation in school, there are a variety of different ways that social isolation can occur. Mm-hmm. So one, it could just be the stereotypical thing where you see someone sitting alone at the lunch table, or not being invited to play football or ultimate frisbee on the playground. But it can also just be invisible. Like one of the main things is someone could have a friend group and still feel socially isolated.
I agree. I feel like when we think about social isolation, a lot of times we name it as like this big, very obvious problem. And in some cases it can be, but a lot of times it isn't. It can be really, really subtle things. And like you said, Alder, you could even have a friend group, but not feel close to anybody or really feel welcome or accepted, or like anybody really wants you to be there. And that can be isolating in and of itself. And I think there's a lot of small ways, even in our regular interactions now, in our mannerisms, I feel like it's become so common to be talking to people and to be on your phone and to not really ever be giving people your full attention. And that in and of itself also can feel really isolating.
Yeah, we could be mindlessly social isolating others, just like Chicky said. And to add to that, we can even be isolating others on social media. It can take many forms. If we were on the receiving end of this for an extended period, social isolation can actually impact our health, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, so social isolation has often been compared to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, because it can often lead to chronic disease, such as coronary heart disease, as well as an increase in the chance of having a stroke later in life. And so this increase, it can cause an increase in cortisol, which will impair your cognitive ability, so it might be more difficult to complete schoolwork. It can also compromise your immune system and just kind of lead to vascular problems later in life. And in addition, it can often be one of the root causes for depression and anxiety.
I think that being socially isolated definitely caused me to be more anxious in social situations. I became much more concerned about what I said and what that would cause other people to think of me. I think that I became much more nervous to interact with new people just because of the experiences that I had in middle school. And so I can definitely say from personal experience, when someone's socially isolated, it not only impacts them in those relationships where they're isolated, but also in following relationships where they might be anxious to be bold in a conversation or to present ideas that might be a little bit more risky. I think it causes people to kind of tone themselves down.
Yeah, I think social isolation can really impact your identity. Normally you have your friend group and you have people around you and you see what other people are doing and you're kind of discovering together and you're learning together, and sometimes you're unsure of who you are, but there's other people who are unsure, so it's less scary and there's people around you to kind of help you in that process. But if you're socially isolated, suddenly you have no one to kind of bounce ideas off or learn from or think about things about. And if you're confused and you're trying to figure out who you are and there's no one else that you can see going through that, it can be really scary and really lonely.
That leads to a bigger problem of not being able to tell anybody how you're feeling. You feel like there's no one around you that you can talk to.
Social isolation, as many of you guys already said, that it affects you in so many different ways. It can really alter your social behavior and also how you perform academically. Academically, it can really affect you because you don't feel that you don't have the confidence to perform at your fullest capability, and you also can't, as you guys said, speak up to ask for the help that you need.
And when no one can help you, there's no end to the cycle of loneliness. If you're suffering for months or even years, as you guys said, it can lead to anxiety, depression, trouble at school, even drug abuse and suicidal thoughts. If you're wondering why social isolation triggers such negative effects, it's because we are all hardwired to connect. It was an evolutionary necessity. Back in the day, survival was based on belonging, and if you weren't part of a tribe where food and shelter were provided, you just wouldn't survive. Flash forward to today, we can physically survive social isolation, but our nervous system can't, and it goes into fight or flight mode. And this raises our stress levels and is bad for our health. So that sort of explains the science behind all this, but it also explains that this pain is real. You can't just simply say, oh, kids will be kids, because humans aren't equipped to cope with social isolation, and we shouldn't have to make them. So let's discuss what we can do. What can students do? What can adults or even schools do to combat social isolation?
I think something we can all do as a community is to actively try to celebrate each other's differences. And that's I think that's the core mission of Beyond Differences, and we try to uphold that mission, embed that mission into all of our programs, such as Know Your Classmates, Be Kind Online, and No One Meets Alone. And I think something else we can all do is just have an open mind and be open to learning something new about our peers, and maybe learn something about their culture, because that can really make them feel as if they're seen and valued.
One of the most important things that I feel like we've done through Beyond Differences is just acknowledging that differences are okay, and even more than that, acknowledging that we should celebrate each other's differences, and notice the places where students might be isolated because of certain differences, and kind of seeing where racism and ableism and homophobia play into that, and just acknowledging that students' differences are good and that we should celebrate those instead of bringing them down.
Yeah, and your comment just kind of leads into how we need to restructure a lot of our lesson plans from an educational standpoint. So one of the things is that social isolation can also come from within if someone feels that if they're not represented, or if they just don't feel as if they fit into a community because of their differences. So that's going to, a big thing that can we can help impact that and change that is, once again, through representation, changing what we teach to students about maybe their culture instead of just teaching what we have in the past. So yeah, just kind of working on representation in a classroom would have a huge impact.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Representation is so important. And I also think when we're trying to fight social isolation, it really has to start with the individual too. If we want to build an inclusive school community. It has to start with all of us trying to be inclusive in our everyday lives and coming into every situation thinking, how am I going to be inclusive? How am I going to make sure that no one's left out here? Whether that means like during a group project, you know, going and asking the person who looks a little confused or like they maybe don't have someone to partner with to be your partner rather than going to your friend like you normally would. And it's, you know, it goes into online too. If you go out with your friends and you take some cute beach pics, like, is someone going to be hurt that they weren't there if you post those? Like, is it really worth posting your cute pictures and ruining a friendship and making someone feel bad and isolated? And just really always thinking, how are my actions affecting others? Am I being inclusive or am I being exclusive? And trying your best to make sure that everyone feels welcome.
We have differences, but we also have a lot in common. And the more we know about our classmates and each other, the more we'll connect.
As many of you already said, social isolation is like very hard to notice to some people, which is why I find it very important to just make sure that you're like checking in with some of your peers if you notice that they're kind of not really engaging in certain activities or in some of the normal things that they would do, because just checking in with someone can really make them feel valued and heard.
Yeah, another aspect of the Beyond Differences curriculum that could be incorporated into classrooms is we like to talk about compliments a lot because they can have a huge impact on just a person's confidence. And yeah, I just think it's one of the more beneficial things and one of the more simple things that you can do.
And getting a compliment can be really helpful to just, you know, let you know that, you know, you're okay, you're valid, and you're helping people and you're doing good, and we appreciate you and we see you and we hear you.
It's those compliments, those steps to acknowledge someone for who they are and the things they've done, that helps. And, you know, that opens their bubble. It shows them that there's people around them that support them and that are there for them.
I love these suggestions, and I'd like to add, helping middle schoolers understand what social isolation is a fundamental step. And understanding how our small and unintentional actions can contribute to other people's loneliness is another important step. During this time of social distancing, it may seem like we're powerless to combat social isolation, but I'd like to end off this session with 4 tips to help alleviate social isolation during this time. These tips come from a book called Together by Dr. Vivek Murthy.
You know, something I'd recommend from the book is just the idea of taking the time, at least 15 minutes a day, to just FaceTime, text, call someone you love, and just let them know that you're there and that you're thinking about them.
Another thing that we can do is take the day to just put down our phones and forget about Instagram and Snapchat and all those other social media platforms, and really spend a day with our family and friends and have that in-person conversation and hang out somewhere fun and just really get to know them.
Yeah, I think that my takeaway was that embracing solitude is really important in quarantine. For me, I've found like a lot of hobbies that allow me to kind of sit by myself and reflect. Like he says in the book, it's just really important to kind of like anchor yourself and make sure that you're grounded and you're able to be involved in what's around you. And I think that's really beneficial.
The last tip that Dr. Murthy gives us in his book is about service. Because when we're lonely, 2 things happen. The first thing is that we start to center ourselves and our own situation and our own feelings and our well-being, and that makes it much more difficult to connect with others, which is already the issue. The second thing that happens is we start to believe that our loneliness is a result of our own faults, and, you know, we believe that we aren't likable enough or we aren't good enough or worthy of connection, and that continues to isolate us more. But when we serve others, we take the focus off of ourselves and put it onto another person, allowing for more connection. We also remind ourselves that we do have something to contribute to that relationship or our community or our society. Acts of service can be really small things. It can be checking in on a neighbor who's older and higher risk of COVID. It could be delivering groceries or snacks or a care package to a friend having an especially hard time during distancing. But small things like that really help us maintain connection even when we can't be physically close to the people that matter.
That was awesome. Thank you, guys. I think you've inspired me to take 15 minutes today to call someone I love. Please join us for our next episode. We are going to take a deep dive into implicit bias. Bye, guys.
Wow, what fantastic remarks from Laura and from Beyond Differences, the video from Beyond Differences. I just loved hearing the recommendations from the young adults in the video. I know that many of the attendees are equally interested in sharing the video with their networks, so we'll be making that available on our website following the event. A profound thank you to you, Laura. Your personal story, the work of Beyond Differences, and the important voice you give to young adults who grapple with these issues are invaluable to our national dialogue and approach to combating social isolation and loneliness. Sincere thank you. And with that, we have arrived at our final session of the event, and hallmark of this two-day event are commitments to action made by organizations across the country. We'll hear from just a small sampling of organizations who made commitments, but whose commitments are mighty and force nonetheless. Introducing the session is coalition member Abby Gilbert from Humana. Abby is an associate director with Humana's Office of Health Affairs and Advocacy, supporting physician relationships, government affairs, thought leadership, and the company's population health strategy, connecting together with state and local health initiatives for the benefit of members, employees, and the community at large. Abby, a huge thank you to you and Humana for your significant leadership in this space, your partnership with the coalition, and for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. So I'm just so excited to get to be the person to close out and do this last session. So again, Abby Gilbert with Humana's Office of Health Affairs and Advocacy. My organization sits at the intersection of our population health strategy work, along with how we think about social determinants of health, health-related social needs, our policy, research, external affairs. So all of the things that we get to do every other coalition members like yourselves. So am I able to advance, or are you guys going to do that for me? Go to the next slide. Thank you so much. So the coalition has asked many of these organizations to submit videos sharing social isolation and loneliness. And I know at Humana, we're really proud to not only get to host this session, but also share a little bit about us and the commitments that we're making in this space also. So we're going to get to watch some videos, but first I'd like to just share a few things about our work at Humana and again, our commitments, and then we'll get right into the other organization videos. So if you could go to the next slide, please. About 5 years ago, Humana set a bold goal to improve the health of the communities we serve 20% by 2020. And why that's important is we really understand that the intersection of what's happening in our health and how that environment and the places that we live and the work that we do and the people that we're around and the environments that we're a part of are ultimately impacting our health outcomes. And so in order to do that, we really believe that we had to focus on setting strategies and being a part of solutions that were happening outside of the doctor's office. That work started originally in one community and then quickly scaled to 7, and now we are in 14 different communities. It's really important, in our opinion, that, you know, if we think about population health and actually solving those things that are happening for people outside of the doctor's office, we have to focus on health being local, right? So we can't, what's happening in one city is very different than, you know, what's happening in another part of the state, or what's happening in Kentucky is very different from what's happening in California. So just a focus on committing to making sure that we understand that health is local and that social determinants of health that people face are different depending on the community, but that there's also similarities. And so within our populations, we very quickly learned that food insecurity and social isolation and loneliness were common among a lot of our members. Next slide, please. So to a lot of folks in this group, again, just reiterating some of my previous comments, but SDOH and health-related social needs obviously really directly impact our overall health. And it's very clear that 60% of what creates health has to do, again, with our socioeconomic, our community environments, and the lifestyles and behaviors that we have. Next slide. So, you know, I think when a lot of our members, and especially in Medicare Advantage, we've been piloting different partnerships and solutions around social isolation and loneliness for several years. But when the pandemic hit, it was very clear that we had a moment in time where everyone suddenly that maybe wasn't experiencing social isolation or loneliness understood what that felt like. And so in partnership with CESIL and many of you that are hopefully on the phone with us today, we really realized that there was an opportunity for a greater call to action. And how can we make sure that out of this, terrible pandemic that's happening, we took the opportunity to really put a voice behind social isolation and loneliness in a way that we hadn't before, and help to really make it easier for people to understand and talk about these issues that they're facing. So with that, we really felt like, again, that it's tough to help people talk about social isolation and loneliness, but ultimately to help people understand that they are not alone in this challenge, and that there are resources and partners who are trying to address it. So next slide, please. And that's really where we got to Far From Alone. So this is really the campaign that we're wrapping around a lot of the work that we at Humana are doing in social isolation and loneliness, as well as the way that we're communicating in partnership with CESIL and many of you. So next slide. So the purpose of Far From Alone is three parts. So I mentioned before the importance of awareness. So how can we leverage this global cultural moment in time where loneliness and social isolation are at the top of mind for many people who were never experiencing it before? And I think too, the important part of that is for us to not only talk about it as a feeling and something that's happening, but really raise awareness for the long-term effects that it's having on people's health. There's consequences to that, and there are things that we can all do to help. So awareness is a big piece of that. The second part is really action. So a lot of what we're going to be accomplishing in this section, but also through other ways like our website, is highlighting partners and information that can help consumers and the people that they care about really understand resources or other things that are available to help them address social isolation and loneliness. And then the last part, which is obviously a lot of what we've talked about for the last couple of days, is really focused around advocacy and how we all partner with, bringing all of our strengths to the table to advocate for policy change that combats loneliness and social isolation. And again, really shining a light on the impacts of health and the impacts that this will have on us for long term. So I think next slide, please. Awesome, thank you. So, as we keep thinking about the new normal in healthcare, and here we all are, sitting in our homes and doing meetings very differently than we would have probably been having this forum before in Washington, D.C., I think that we can really focus on, reimagining a lot of the things that we were already doing, and really Humana's excited to just continue to understand how we can be better through all of these learnings and before the pandemic hit. So just a couple of things that we're really committed to continuing and doing, which is one, keep focusing on the data. So we really have to find where our most vulnerable members are and be able to target interventions that they need. And I think it's important that we really believe that the learnings that we're getting from our members and through pilots and programs are really important to share learnings with others, so that ultimately as a system, and we can help improve things for more members and communities. The second one is really focusing on and understanding what those things are relating to access and coverage, and again, continuing to think about health-related social needs as gaps in care, right? So it's one thing to focus on understanding the access issues, but it's another to really just help address things like basic needs, food, and partnerships that we can bring in social isolation. With that, I think the third one is also, again, expanding partnerships. So how can we connect across all sectors? We do a lot of work with community partners, government, private, public. I think we're all in this together, and Far From Alone is just one example of how we can all raise awareness together. We don't have to be in healthcare. We can be in technology. We can be in any sort of other business that is committed to improving these some of these issues in their community. And the last one is really just continuing to focus on payment innovation and transformation. So when we think about our business and we think about how we're interacting with community-based partners that are providing services to our members and communities, we have to keep thinking about payment innovation in order to focus on sustainability and innovation and care. Next slide. Perfect, thank you. So just one exciting update before we the video section. We wanted to share with everyone, and information gets sent out after, but on October 21st, we're actually doing an event with USA Today storytellers and an organization called TRISH, so the Translational, I always get this wrong, Research Innovation for Space Health, and NASA are ultimately helping us to present a storytellers event on Far From Alone. So you'll get to hear from multiple astronauts on the ways that they have dealt with social isolation and loneliness and coping through that, as well as some great insights on how, again, health impact is happening via some of these issues. And then next slide. Great. So now I'm excited because we're actually going to get to the part where we're focusing on other organizations' commitments as well. And we're going to do that through video. And we're going to kind of break that up and do a little bit of polling in between each. So I know it's hard to just watch and be talked at. So first, I want to just say that as we watched all of the videos, so we got a sneak peek, we were able to really see that there were 3 common themes throughout all of the commitments and videos that we're about to see. And we're gonna, break each of those up, but just to kind of give you a sneak peek, the first one is really scalable infrastructures. So the idea that many organizations are creating standardized and scalable tools and programs that others can easily adopt. And again, data sharing is a big part of that. So it allows us to, again, prioritize some of the most impacted populations. So we'll get to see again how a great theme of scalable infrastructures is present throughout all of these commitments. The second one is technology. So I know we've spoken about that a lot as well. So how technology can bring more people together and provide, again, that foundational data to help us better get to the root cause of health-related social needs. Like social isolation and loneliness. And then the last one is probably of no surprise to this group, but again, understanding that we all agree that advocating for legislative and regulatory policy solutions for this problem will ensure greater social connectedness for at-risk populations. So I think we'll, again, get to explore each of these themes a little bit more and actually feedback through some polling. But first, I think we're ready to kind of tee up those first videos. So it looks like first we're going to see Motion Picture and Television Foundation, Healthy Places by Design, and Beyond Differences, and then we'll be back together to do some polling.
My name is Maureen Feldman, and I'm the director of the Social Isolation Impact Project for the Motion Picture and Television Fund. I'm honored to be representing MPTF at this forum and to be a coalition member. Social isolation is perhaps the most significant secondary adverse consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. The convergence of these two epidemics are magnifying the scope and intensity of the problems on a global scale and highlighting the immediate need for scalable infrastructures to reduce loneliness. MPTF has been addressing social isolation and loneliness in numerous ways since 2016, when we created and launched a volunteer-driven telephone-based social connectivity program we call the Daily Call Sheet. The Daily Call Sheet thoughtfully connects trained volunteers with individuals in need of social connections. We had a robust program prior to the pandemic, but when social distancing requirements were implemented, we immediately increased the number of volunteers on our team, now well into the hundreds, who've made thousands and thousands of calls to those living alone or in need of extra social connections. So you might call us experts in this field. Based on the success of the Daily Call Sheet program, when the pandemic hit, we began receiving requests to train other organizations throughout the country on how to launch their own phone-based social call programs, since they could no longer serve their clients in person, effectively creating a network of MPTF-trained organizations. Building on our experience, we developed and launched an end-to-end call hub solution for seamless social connections and data collection. Through the Call Hub platform, we facilitate safe telephonic connections and facilitate the collection of data used to quantify impact of these programs. Lastly, we've been hosting summits on social isolation and loneliness for the last 4 years, ultimately educating and inspiring others to take action. So with our past as our compass and an overwhelming need right before us, over the next 2 years, MPTF will remain committed to supporting community organizations and to amplifying the efforts to reduce social isolation and loneliness on a national scale. So here are our 4 bold goals. By the end of 2022, MPTF commits to take action through the continuation of our National Social Call Training Program. MPTF will expand the Social Connectivity Toolkit training by 500%. Currently, we've trained over 100 organizations, and by the end of 2022, we'd like to make that 500. Through continued expansion of MPTF social call trained organizations, we pledge to expand our current 27-state footprint to cover all 50 states and territories. Goal 3, across all states and trained organizations, we pledge to make the Connect Call Hub platform available to all MPTF-trained nonprofit organizations, providing an end-to-end solution to deploy and manage effective social call programs, manage data, and enhance impact. Use of the platform is currently available free of charge through our beta program, and we're committed to finding ways to continue to offer this free or at a limited cost for nonprofit partners. So MPTF will remain committed to data collection that evaluates impact, increases referrals to additional services, and improves health and quality of life. We pledge to create harmony around measurement and evaluation by working with top researchers and encouraging the use of a newly implemented standardized screening and data collection tool for agencies working with us and utilizing our centralized call hub. We're excited to report that in partnership with the Coalition Scientific Advisory Council, we'll be working with Matthew Smith on refining our own screening process, which we'll share with all agencies who go through our training. So across these efforts, we are committed to expanding our impact to reach at least 500,000 individuals by the end of 2022. I look forward to partnering with many of you and working together to reduce the instances of social isolation and loneliness across the country.
I'm Risa Wilkerson, Executive Director of Healthy Places by Design. Our nonprofit organization is dedicated to advancing community-led action and proven place-based strategies to ensure health and well-being for all. We have served as a strategic thought partner and consultant to more than 36 philanthropic organizations, including local, state, and national foundations across 42 states. We are committed to building local capacity for policy, systems, and environmental changes, helping community coalitions and government agencies advance community-driven efforts. As a consultant and advisor, we help each funder, partnership, and community leader we serve advance equity by elevating it as a priority in all projects and initiatives. As a technical assistance provider, we coach partners through leading community-driven change processes, maintaining thriving community coalitions, and sustaining healthy community work. And as experienced facilitators, we design and manage comprehensive, multi-component, and tailored collaborative learning and networking initiatives that result in mutual understanding, shared commitment to action, and strong connections between community change agents and those who invest in them. Social cohesion is a vital part of Healthy Places by Design's vision of healthy, equitable communities where everyone can reach their full potential. We know that social connection not only improves individuals' mental health and sense of well-being, but that it also contributes to communities' resilience to adversity and ability to collaborate. Over the last 2 decades, we've learned that the most powerful and inspiring success stories have occurred when people have an opportunity to connect with others in meaningful ways and work together toward common goals. To elevate lessons about how social isolation impacts health, we've collaborated with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation's Global Ideas for U.S. Solutions team to explore related concepts and their impact on a culture of health for all ages. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation gave grants to 6 organizations to help them address social isolation in their communities by adapting solutions from abroad. We are connecting these grantees, their partners, and other practitioners through a series of conversations so that they can learn from each other and to share how they're working to reduce social isolation, especially among vulnerable populations of all ages. We are discovering emerging practices that can be transferred across populations for greater impact. We're discussing ways to address social isolation through a community-level lens, meaning through policies, systems, and built environments. We're fostering new connections among practitioners, researchers, and others committed to reducing social isolation. And finally, we're exploring interest in an ongoing community of practice and ideas for collective efforts. The goals of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness are well aligned with those of Healthy Places by Design and the practitioners we've been learning with. I want to express my gratitude for the invitation to speak today and for sharing a vision for a more socially connected future. Right now, decisions are being made that will affect our social fabric for decades to come. That's why our work and yours is so urgent. After this action forum, Healthy Places by Design will work with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and multiple practitioners to develop actionable recommendations for advancing the field by addressing social isolation through a community-level lens. Collectively, we are committed to centering these recommendations on asset-based, equity-focused, and anti-racist, anti-othering approaches. We look forward to joining others who are making commitments today in collective efforts to not only reduce social isolation and loneliness, but to create a sense of social cohesion and true belonging. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Telmis, and I am the co-founder and executive director of a fantastic, spunky organization based in the San Francisco Bay Area called Beyond Differences. Beyond Differences was founded in memory of my beloved daughter, Lily Rachel Smith, who passed away in her sleep nearly 11 years ago from medical complications associated with the cranial facial syndrome with which she was born. Now, you know, Lily really didn't even notice that she had any differences until she arrived in middle school. And despite the fact that Lily grew up in the same wonderful community with the same set of classmates from kindergarten all the way through middle school, it is in that time of adolescence when students begin to separate from one another and begin to find their groups, and others tend to feel a sense of disconnection and not belonging. And that is what Lily went through. Now, in those days, I had no idea what social isolation was. I just knew that Lily was sad. She suddenly would start calling me from the girls' bathroom during the school day saying, "Mom, please come pick me up. None of the girls want me to have lunch at their tables." And you know, as a parent, your heart breaks when you receive phone calls like that. So my life's work, my life's dedication, and now my life's passion is to help other families all across the United States to understand that social isolation is a public health crisis, and no child should ever come to school not feeling accepted, respected, valued, and included by their peers. But I don't do this work alone. We started out being a student-led organization, and as of today, we are still student-led. We have high school students from the Bay Area all the way up to Portland, Oregon, who are the leaders of our movement, and they help write curriculum, they help our social media campaigns, they speak at public events, and they are incredible. And we also now partner with over 6,000 schools across the United States, junior high schools, middle schools, upper elementary schools, and yes, even some high schools. All 50 states. That's from Alabama to Washington State, from Southern California to Vermont, and out to Hawaii and up to Alaska. There isn't a state or a teacher in our country that doesn't recognize that social isolation is serious. And again, this was years before the COVID pandemic. Today, all of us understand that through distance learning, our children are suffering more from social isolation, the effects on their mental health, their academic health, their physical health. Everything is compromised because of social isolation. But Beyond Differences are the experts, and I am proud to be here this evening asking you to join me in helping us grow from what is now our reach into 35% of all the schools across the country that are in this age group and get us to 100%. Everyone should be able to come to school and feel a sense of belonging. Teachers know that, parents know that, and now we've woken up a whole generation of students that know that too. And they know what's in their heart to do the right thing and make all their classmates feel accepted and included. So please join me. If you're listening, you could bring Beyond Differences free programs. We are one of the best transformative social emotional curriculum available across the United States. All you have to do is sign up at beyonddifferences.org and bring our programs that are fun, inspiring, newsworthy, and feel good to your school and to your community. We can do this. It is easy, and we are here to help you. So please don't delay. Sign up and help us get into 100% of all the middle and junior high schools in our country. And together, we will end social isolation.
All right, so thank you so much to our first 3 video speakers. As we just heard, creating clear, sustainable, scalable infrastructure to drive awareness and advocacy around addressing loneliness and social isolation is key to our long-term impact. So we're going to get started with our first poll, and that is, what would you, the audience, rank as the top need to create a scalable infrastructure? First, adopting more universal and scalable training models for addressing loneliness and social isolation. Second, prioritizing the most impacted populations through data sharing. Third, establishing standardized screening tools that address interoperability challenges. Or last, establishing sustainable payment models to incent embedding and addressing social health. We'll give everyone a minute to make their choice. All right, it actually looks like we've got a couple different things, but at 40%, everyone is saying establishing sustainable payment models to incent embedding, addressing social health. So great participation on that. To close, thank you. And okay, so next, the next organizations that we're going to highlight, their videos are really focused around that theme of technology. So how is technology a crucial way to build social connections? We are going to hear first from Oates and then second from Pix Health, and then we'll get back together for another poll.
Hi, my name is Tom Camper. I'm the Executive Director of Older Adults Technology Services, OATS. We're a national nonprofit organization that helps people over the age of 60 learn and use technology to improve their lives. For several years, we've been focusing on social isolation as a major problem that senior citizens are facing, and helping people who are first-time technology users build social networks to overcome that social isolation and build stronger and healthier connections with their friends and families and communities. We've been partnering with the Humana Foundation in San Antonio, Texas on a citywide initiative working to bring all of the different organizations and public agencies and even local companies involved to help coordinate activities to get seniors to use technology so that they're more socially engaged. We've been getting very strong outcomes from seniors who are showing with our surveys after the programs that they are indeed making those social connections and living more successfully as a result of the programs. When COVID started, we were forced to change a lot of our program models, of course, like every other nonprofit that works with seniors, so that the delivery could be digital, entirely delivered through Zoom sessions and telephone connections. We retooled over 100 different programs that we were delivering and began producing them for online consumption. And since the beginning of the crisis, we've had over 60,000 people across the country participate in our Zoom training sessions, some of which are focused on how do you use these tools and how do you get online and manage things like online shopping and things like that, but also programs that bring seniors together in community. We've been having sessions called Team Senior Planet, where seniors are doing morning stretch sessions, and hundreds of people are coming together, not just for the activities, but also because they recognize others who have been sharing those experiences with them. They're making new friends, and they're shepherding each other along during this really difficult time for folks. With support from the Humana Foundation, we've also been able to launch a program called Aging Connected. It's a $3 million grant, so it's the largest national project we've ever embarked on. And what we're doing with that connection, that project, is we are focusing on bridging the technology gap for older adults around the country who may not be participating in broadband technology from home. Many people go to a senior center or a library to use technology, but if they don't subscribe from home, they are vulnerable in moments like the COVID crisis because they can't get the same resources and information that others in the community are getting, and it leaves them more vulnerable and disconnected. So we've been working with telecommunications companies, national nonprofit partners, public sector leaders, mayors of different cities, and of course people from Humana to help build these bridges and increase the opportunities for seniors to go on the internet and manage their connections with other people as a result. We've set a very ambitious target for Aging Connected. We're looking to bring 1 million seniors online over the next 18 months and really move the needle from a situation where people are really struggling to a situation where more seniors than ever are using the internet, and then helping their friends and neighbors connect as well. We'll be helping increase the opportunities for people to connect through low-cost internet programs such as Internet Essentials run by Comcast, or programs run by T-Mobile that help people get online for lower expenditures and are helping seniors connect around the country. And we'll be working with local administrations, mayoral agencies, even the federal government, the Administration for Community Living, to help them raise awareness about the importance of technology engagement for seniors and help them promote the programs that exist already that people can be taking advantage of. We hope that when people get online, they'll use the internet both to connect to critical resources such as their Social Security Administration information or online banking tools, and where they're actually helping them use those tools more successfully. We've done Zoom calls with AARP where we've had over 14,000 people learning how to connect to things like internet resources, but also how to make the most of their Social Security benefits online. And we've created videos with Capital One Bank that help people learn how to do online banking safely so that they can manage their finances remotely during a period when they may not be able to leave their homes for extended periods. This effort to help use technology to overcome social isolation is the biggest program of its kind. It's the largest initiative ever launched to bring senior citizens into the internet and get people to use technology more successfully. And it's a very large tent approach that we're using. We're bringing in a very diverse coalition of people into Aging Connected. We're hoping that if people out there know more about the program, they can encourage people to find us through oats.org is our website. But Aging Connected is also launched under our online community for senior citizens that's called Senior Planet. So people can go to seniorplanet.org and find Aging Connected, and that's an area where they can go on the internet, they can find out about programs that are available to them, and over time they'll be able to be more successful in helping seniors in their communities sign up for this critical set of resources, and also direct them to free training that we have. We've delivered training to tens of thousands of people. We're currently running a national hotline helping people get basic information about how to use the internet and how to sign up for new programs. And we're also creating programs for people that range from financial management to creative expression initiatives that people can engage in. So once they go online, they can really make the most of it. We're really excited to be working with the Humana Foundation on these projects. We know we're making a difference with the technology connections and helping people overcome this social isolation that for many seniors isn't just an inconvenience or something that they have to endure, but can even have really serious health and mental health consequences for people. So we believe that we're really saving lives here, and we think that this campaign is really going to make a difference over the next year and a half. We really invite you to join us and help us stay more connected with seniors around the country and find companies and organizations that can help us make the most of this campaign. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Cindy Jordan, CEO and co-founder of Pix Health. Pix Health is a 24/7 scalable technology solution that addresses social isolation and loneliness. How do we do it? I like to call it the peanut butter and chocolate solution. We take artificial intelligence and we marry that to human intervention. So for the AI, we use a funny, caring, cute, really empathetic chatbot whose name is Pixar right there. And then for the human intervention, we have a compassionate care center that intervenes when somebody is chronically lonely or in need of an urgent social determinants of health. We find people when loneliness has a propensity to affect their clinical health. We are super thrilled to be a part of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness because we know firsthand the suffering that these conditions can cause and the profound impact that they have on a person's health and mortality rate. As a part of Pix Health's continuing commitment to our shared mission, we publicly pledge the following, which I will read to you now. We believe that loneliness and social isolation should be viewed as a treatable chronic medical condition. To that end, we are seeking to pursue a diagnostic code that would facilitate the delivery of vital services to those affected by these serious issues. In cooperation with the Coalition, we hope to draft language for a concurrent resolution expressing the will of both chambers of Congress to acknowledge the critical impact of social isolation and loneliness and the intent to address it in all appropriate legislative and administrative oversight activities. We intend to do a few things. First, identify potential sponsors of the concurrent resolution and seek to have them introduced early in the 117th Congress. Second, we'll work with those sponsors and other potential supporters like the Congressional Mental Health Caucus and National Healthcare Associations to attract broader support of the concurrent resolution and the creation of a diagnostic code. Finally, as an organization, Pix Health is committed to driving publicity for these activities in order to build support and create awareness for these efforts. Additionally, Pix Health will always use our technology platform to continue to lessen the suffering of the lonely and socially isolated. And we will continue to collect, analyze, and distribute data from our work to support the understanding of the problem and the solutions of loneliness and social isolation. We can't thank you enough to the Coalition for creating a space for so many like-minded thought leaders and organizations to come together to help end the epidemic of loneliness and social isolation.
Okay, thank you so much. As we get to the next question, technology will help us drive innovation in addressing loneliness and social isolation so that we can bring more people together and provide foundational data to get to the root cause of the health-related social needs. So our next poll is, what would you rank as the most important advancement we could make from a technology perspective within the next 5 years? First, broadband internet access. Second, training end users with specific needs. Third, partnerships that will help scale access to specific tools and solutions, such as social sharing applications and telehealth video. Next, providing foundational data to understand the need. Or last, cutting edge innovation solutions that simplify the individual's ability to connect with others. All right, it looks like the group feels like at 54%, broadband internet access is the top result. All right, thank you. We'll close this. All right, so the next organization's video highlights are really going to stand out and talk about policy change. So again, I think we heard from our partners at PICS that obviously, even though they're a technology solution, they were very committed to policy change. But we have been hearing a lot about that. And so from the American Psychological Association and N4A.
I'm Catherine McGuire, Chief Advocacy Officer for the American Psychological Association. APA is the leading scientific and professional organization representing psychologists in the United States, with over 120,000 members engaged in the practice, research, and teaching of psychology. Our association is committed to taking actions that will benefit society and improve lives. APA is a proud member of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness. We appreciate the opportunity to reaffirm our efforts to ending social isolation and loneliness across populations. As psychologists have been describing over the past 2 days, social isolation and loneliness are major health risks, and with effects on mortality comparable to smoking or obesity. Both social isolation and loneliness are linked to depression and anxiety and are associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, dementia, and other conditions. It's important to understand that social isolation and loneliness have adverse effects in and of themselves. Research finds that social isolation and loneliness affect mortality even after adjusting for lifestyle, such as smoking, alcohol use, and physical activity. They are also risk factors for suicide and suicidal ideation, independent of co-occurring depression. Roughly 1 in 4 community-dwelling adults age 65 and older in the U.S. are considered socially isolated. And between 40 and 50% of older adults are at least occasionally lonely, with roughly 20% reporting frequent loneliness. However, while older populations are sometimes the first demographic group people think of who are at risk, social isolation and loneliness affects us all. Loneliness may actually be less common among older adults than other age groups. We are all at risk. We know there is more work ahead to end social isolation and loneliness, and we will elevate our work with a commitment in 3 areas. Number 1, utilize psychological research to inform and shape national policy strategies and public education campaigns to combat social isolation and loneliness. Number 2, apply psychology's expertise in behavioral change and social determinants of health to the area of social isolation and connectedness. And 3, advocate in collaboration with the Coalition for increased funding for research to fully understand the pathways that link social isolation and health. Lastly, APA will continue to work with Congress to expand and train our healthcare workforce to address social isolation and loneliness. This includes increasing access to mental and behavioral health services and supports, including, importantly, telemental health for people throughout the lifespan. I want to thank the Coalition for the opportunity to speak to you today. The American Psychological Association looks forward to our continued partnership and using science to address these important societal issues. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sandy Markwood, and I'm the CEO of the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging, or N4A. N4A represents the nation's 622 area agencies on aging and is the voice in Washington for the more than 240 tribal aging programs that collectively support millions of older adults throughout the United States. Our members provide a range of services, including meals, transportation, and personal care, to help older adults age safely and successfully where they want to age, at home and in the community. N4A is proud to be a founding member of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness. Our members know firsthand how important it is that we, as a society, address the critical and growing issues of social isolation and loneliness for older adults and their caregivers, but also for people across the entire lifespan. The Aging Network has known and seen the escalating negative impact of social isolation and loneliness among older adults we serve in communities across the country. And now the research is mounting to support these observations. What we see, and now what research shows, is that an increasing number of older adults are so socially isolated and lonely, that not only is their health at risk, including greater risk of heart disease, diabetes, depression, and cognitive decline, but they also face a 29% greater risk of early mortality. And whereas the COVID pandemic has amplified these risks for all of us, it has hit especially hard on older adults who have proven to be the most vulnerable to the coronavirus, and as a result, have experienced even more devastating isolation and loneliness. We've all seen the pictures on the news of older adults stuck in their homes or looking out the windows of their assisted living or nursing home facilities. These are not just faces. These are the older adults in your community and mine. These are the people that the Aging Network is dedicated to help. N4A is so pleased to be administering Engaged, the National Resource Center for Engaging Older Adults, which is funded by the Administration for Community Living, to equip the Aging Network, our members, area agencies on aging, and tribal aging programs, as well as state units on aging and aging service providers to combat social isolation and loneliness through the engagement of older adults in their community. N4A, through our work with our members and through the Engaged Resource Center, is committed to take action on ending social isolation and loneliness through outreach. We will conduct a large-scale poll of the Aging Network and community organizations to identify social engagement priorities and the supports needed to achieve them. Sharing good ideas and best practices that make a difference. We will create a clearinghouse of tried and true social engagement programs that local communities and aging agencies can adapt to the needs of older adults in their communities. And we will hold trainings and a national convening of the Aging Network to help spur the development and replication of these great ideas and programs across the country. Inform and engage. We will develop consumer-friendly materials that local agencies can co-brand and share with older adults and caregivers that help to inform them of the signs and the symptoms of social isolation and loneliness, and provide a roadmap to help them seek help, support, and connect to engagement opportunities in their community. At N4A, we're excited to be part of CESIL, and we look forward to working with all the members of the coalition to address this important issue head on. Together, we can end social isolation and loneliness for older adults, for their caregivers, and for all of us. We hope you will join the coalition in its efforts to foster social connectivity.
All right. So as we get ready for our next poll, we are going to focus on what is your opinion? Which of these policy changes should we prioritize first? Increase public awareness regarding social isolation and loneliness and its effect on health and well-being. Second, enhance social services and supports to address social isolation and loneliness. Third, advance health services and supports that address social isolation and loneliness. Fourth, leverage innovative solutions that foster connections and social integration. Or last, advance research to continue to develop the evidence base necessary to design effective programs and policies. All right. So this one looks to be pretty split, but at 30%, we're saying leverage innovative solutions that foster connection and social integration. So it looks like lots of important policy changes and for the coalition to focus on for the next couple years. All right. So last but certainly not least, we're going to get to hear from Meals on Wheels and the coalition itself for their commitments. So many seniors receiving Meals on Wheels may be their only social connection for the day. So Meals on Wheels has truly taken this opportunity with programs to be more than a meal to these seniors. So I'm going to turn it over. We're going to hear from Meals on Wheels and then the coalition, and then Eddie will close us out for the day.
Hi, I'm Carter Florence with Meals on Wheels America. Yesterday, you heard from our CEO and President, Ellie Hollander, during a fireside chat with David Brooks. One critical conversation shared there focused on the reality that homebound seniors may not be socially connected because of their inability to leave the home. Many of the factors that make older adults more susceptible to social isolation and loneliness, like living alone, managing limited mobility, or having past experiences with falls, are commonly found among seniors receiving Meals on Wheels. In fact, for many homebound Meals on Wheels recipients, the person delivering their meal may be the only person that they see that day, or even that week. This was true before and during COVID-19 and will be the case long after the coronavirus pandemic. For those of you who don't know, Meals on Wheels America is the national leadership organization supporting grassroots group of more than 5,000 local community-based Meals on Wheels programs across the country through advocacy, education, research, funding, and more. With every meal delivery, these local programs are actively working to create and foster strong human connections with some of the country's most vulnerable older adults. In this way, Meals on Wheels staff and volunteers become an invaluable part of seniors' social networks. We like to say that Meals on Wheels delivers more than a meal to help keep seniors healthy, safe, and independent in their homes and communities where they want to be. A large component of our service model is the critical face-to-face social contact and opportunities for meaningful conversations provided through every meal delivery or at congregate meal sites for more mobile seniors, showing them that someone cares about their well-being. Above and beyond the daily delivery, Meals on Wheels organizations often offer additional programming aimed at creating social connections for their clients. This programming includes a whole host of efforts from pet assistance to senior companion services. While Meals on Wheels America is committed to empowering local community programs to improve the health and quality of lives of the seniors they serve so that no one is left hungry or isolated, now more than ever, we're committed to deploying effective solutions to foster human connections with Meals on Wheels clients. In the coming year, we will be conducting research to better understand the effectiveness of socialization programming delivered by Meals on Wheels programs. We understand the importance of exploring, implementing, and scaling evidence-informed solutions to better address the changing nutrition and social needs of the clients we serve. We are pleased to join with our partners featured at this Action Forum to do our part to create a more socially connected community. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. As you well know by now, I'm Eddie Garcia, the co-director of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness, and the founder and co-director of the Foundation for Social Connection. In 2018, the Coalition set out on a bold goal to engage diverse stakeholders, like many of you here, increase public awareness, promote innovative research, and advocate for policy changes that combat the adverse consequences of social isolation and loneliness. Through coordinated leadership with many of our members and champions in Congress, namely Senator Tina Smith and Congressman Trone, who we heard from yesterday, the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act earlier this year included several policy successes for the Coalition and older Americans everywhere in addressing social isolation and loneliness. Continuing, but also looking beyond the critical needs of older adults, the Coalition has further expanded its policy platform to include 5 major areas relevant to all age groups and vulnerable populations writ large. These include policies that address social services, healthcare services, expanding the evidence-based and scientific research, promoting innovation, and broad and targeted awareness campaigns. Thinking more broadly throughout our policy advocacy and in light of the COVID-19 pandemic's necessary physical distancing requirements, we began to recognize a crucial need and opportunity for the coalition to do more to bolster an informed national dialogue and coordinated movement toward addressing the issues at hand. With this in mind, just 2 months ago, we officially formed the Foundation for Social Connection, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting the expansion and infusion of evidence-based practices and scientific research into programs and interventions, those already in play and those yet to be developed. As you heard yesterday, the Foundation and Coalition are convening the first ever national standing scientific advisory council dedicated solely to increasing the translation of social isolation and loneliness research into real-world application. The SAC, chaired by Dr. Julian Holt-Lundstedt, will convene to provide recommendations to the work of the coalition, but will also generate their own body of activities and potential research to fill gaps in the existing evidence base. Even with these new developments, we believe there is even more to be done, and this action forum is that first step toward that commitment. Specifically, the Foundation for Social Connection, supported by the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness, stands committed to expand its impact by announcing the formation of its Innovation Network, an incubation forum for the sole purpose of convening similarly interested multi-stakeholders to foster the development of evidence-based interventions at scale. The Innovation Network will seek to bring policymakers, funders, researchers, public and private sector programs, and other relevant stakeholders around targeted specific interventions. And we will seek to do this in collaboration with other convening organizations interested in such an approach, including many of whom you've heard from over the last 2 days. As a first step, we're excited to announce that we will be supporting the commitments to action you just heard as our potential first projects of the Innovation Network, supporting their success and reporting out their progress along the way. We're excited for the work ahead of us, and we ask you to join us to make these successes a reality. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to my co-director, Andrew McPherson, for our closing remarks. Andrew?
Thank you, Eddie. Wow, what an incredible second day of our Action Forum. I want to just end by saying thank you so much to all of our speakers and supporters and members and attendees. We had hundreds of people with us the past 2 days. Today was an extraordinary day. We heard from the Agency for Community Living, we heard from tech innovators, we heard from community-based organizations, and I think most importantly, we heard commitments, specific actionable commitments from organizations across the country and globally. So thank you so much. We invite you to join our coalition as a member. Go to www.endsocialisolation.org and become a member today. I want to just conclude in our final minute with a quote. I have this quote in my office in Washington, D.C. that really inspires me in our work together. The quote goes like this: "It is a human certainty that no one can know their own beauty or perceive a sense of their own worth until it has been reflected back to them in the mirror of another loving, caring human." Thank you again for joining us. Let's go and see and be seen by others. Our work continues together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.